Welcome in. We'll give it a few minutes to allow all of our attendees to join Zoom. As Jasmine was telling me earlier, it's always the time when Zoom decides to update. So sometimes it pushes you back a little bit. We will be using the Q&A feature. So we have the questions that you put in the RSVP, but if more come up, please put them into that Q&A so that we can make sure to get your questions answered for you and be able to learn more about the IHON program. We'll give it a few more minutes. If you already know some questions that you didn't put in the RSVP that you've thought of, feel free to put those in the Q&A. We'll just kind of stock those up until after we have a little bit of information to be able to give you all. So we'll give it another minute or so to let everybody in. My name is Hillary. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission at PLU, and I'll be kind of the moderator for this session and also be checking out the Q&A. So if there is any other questions, I can help answer those too that are admission related. But we'll get started to make sure that we're staying on time. Some of you might be eating dinner and watching us or waiting for dinner. So we want to make sure that we stick to kind of our 45 minutes that we have allotted for this. But like I said, my name is Hillary Powell. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission. This is one of our You Ask, We Answer sessions, and this is specifically about our International Honors Program. So one of the things that we always like to kind of open with in these sessions is introduction of our panelists. And so if they can all introduce themselves for the students, give a background of name, hometown, what you're majoring in for sure or thinking about, and why you decided to choose PLU. And for Dr. Dowland to talk about how long you've been at PLU and also why you chose to teach here. But we'll start with Jasmine and then Anna, and then we'll go to Seth.
So my name's Jasmine. I am originally from Helena, Montana. I am a biology major at PLU right now, and I chose IHON because one, there's a really fun study abroad tour you can go on, which I went on, and another reason was because it offers you a new way of learning, which you can't really get in other classrooms, especially for me as a bio major. So it's more of a seminar-based class where you can just openly discuss topics that are going on around in the world or like post or historical topics. And it really helped me learn a new perspective.
I'm Anna. I am from Tokyo, Japan, and I am an economics major. And I chose PLU largely because of the IHON program, actually. And also, my brother graduated from PLU a few years ago, and he would always tell me about how caring and dedicated the professors are, and that's something that was really important to me.
And my name is Seth Dowland. I'm the director of the International Honors Program. This is my 13th year at PLU, and I studied at much bigger universities, but really did choose to come to PLU because I knew that that teaching was really my passion and my calling, and I knew that that was central to the work I was going to do at PLU. And I also wanted to teach at a place that engages the whole person, not just the subject material that I'm teaching, but really trying to connect with students at a deep level. And I've been able to do that and really love working here. So I think I'm going to kind of segue into a little bit of a formal presentation about the International Honors Program. I have a few slides that I'm going to share my screen in just a second. Please do put any questions you have in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to leave plenty of time to address those questions and answers. But I did want to start with kind of an overview of the International Honors Program and tell everyone a little bit about what you'd be signing up for if you decided to apply and were accepted to the International Honors Program. And then we'll talk with Anna and Jasmine about their experience as IHON students. So without further ado, let me find my slides here. And of course, they've disappeared. Here they are. It says my screen sharing is paused, Hillary. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong there.
Well, let's figure this out. Try it again.
Okay, just give me a sec. I've lost my presentation. Okay, there it is.
Okay.
All right, sorry, y'all. This is the fun of Zoom. This looks a little more promising.
There we go. Just takes
Okay.
a couple times.
Just taking a little time. So IHON is an alternative way to fulfill your general education requirements for graduation. And I always start with this point because a lot of the questions that I get from potential applicants is it more work? Is it more classes? And the answer to that is usually no. What IHON is an alternative way to satisfy your general education requirements. It's the program is usually 7 classes. It replaces 7 classes in the general education requirement that you would otherwise have to take. So it's an alternate way to satisfy gen ed requirements. You'll notice I said it's usually not more classes. The one exception is students who bring in a huge number of credits that count towards our general education program. We do count some of those in IHON. It's a kind of case-by-case basis. But in some cases, it would mean taking the IHON program would require 1 or 2 more classes than it would if you were in the regular gen ed. But I hope at the end of the presentation, you're excited enough about the experience offered by IHON that you decide it's worth applying anyway. I think it's a great program, and I think it has a lot to offer. So instead of taking classes offered by different PLU departments, religion, economics, history, political science, you take IHON courses, which are inherently interdisciplinary, meaning they draw from different academic fields, designed around problems or questions, and using different methods, diverse methods and ways of thinking. So that's the program in a nutshell. And we put together a flyer to kind of address, are you the type of student who ought to consider IHON? Is IHON for me? And we like to invite students who want intellectual challenges and who like to kind of think outside the box. So our classes, the way I describe the difference in IHON classes versus regular gen ed classes is often in a sociology class, you're really learning sociological methods, and you're kind of developing within this single discipline, which can be really fruitful in one way. But in IHON class, you're often focused more concretely on a single issue and drawing on sociology and political science and theology and bringing all these different perspectives to bear on a single issue in an IHON course. This is a quote from an Argentinian poet, Jorge Luis Borges, that's become kind of a motto for our program. Knowing old stories and retrieving and reworking them can bring about illumination in a different way from rational inquiry. Particularly in our first year courses, a lot of what you do in IHON is to read really old texts, some of them written 4,000 years ago, some a little more recently than that. And our goal isn't necessarily to teach you about that culture or that time period, but rather to work on reading the text with eyes toward what it illuminates for you today, and to teach you how to think about that text and bring something to our conversations in class. And so that's a lot of what you do, particularly in the first year courses in IHON, is read and discuss old texts, and recovering those stories, I think, is a way of learning that's going to be a little bit different than you might do, for instance, in Jasmine's case, in a biology class. And then the last question we ask, are you the kind of person who doubts that we've got all the answers and wants to consider what other cultures and other times and places have said about fundamental problems of human existence? And one of the things that I think all IHON students discover is that in doing this work of recovering old stories, you realize that people in different cultures and at different times have thought very differently about things that we often might take for granted. And opening your mind up to that kind of historical cross-cultural study is a way of broadening your perspective and developing kind of a richer sense of what it means to be human, which sounds very grandiose, but I really do think that's at a core of what we do in our IHON courses. One of the things that we've been trying hard to emphasize in our program is that IHON is for all kinds of students. You don't have to be the type of student who took every single honors or AP course at your high school to succeed in IHON. We work hard to make our classes accessible regardless of your previous knowledge or what type of high school you went to. We want everybody to participate in conversation. And so we do make this a kind of a broadly accessible program. As long as you have a commitment to work hard, to read, and to grow intellectually, you can succeed in IHON. The goal of our courses, and again, particularly our first year courses, isn't to teach you about things. This isn't a course where we give you information about ancient Greek civilization and then ask you on an exam to kind of spit that back at us. We will read ancient Greek texts, but really what we're interested in is your ability to think about that text and what it might mean for us today. And that's really what our discussions are focused on. As far as I know, we've never had an exam in a first year IHON course. That's not the type of learning we want to sponsor. We want to sponsor your ability to read, to think, to learn from your peers, to learn from the text you're reading, and to engage in discussion. And we think that's a skill that you can develop in our program. IHON works with any major. So we have students from virtually every major. I think almost every major at the university is represented in IHON right now. And you'll notice the biggest majors in IHON are all across the university in all different fields. We have at least 10 students in each of the majors listed on the slide there. So nursing, business, biology, communications, global studies, and psychology. At least 10 IHON students from each of those programs. And our total population is about 170, 180 students at the university. So the program works with any major, and Jasmine will probably tell you how it's worked with her biology major in a few minutes, but it is, it's open to you regardless of what you're planning on studying at PLU. And again, this is, I think you've already heard me talk about kind of our desire to recover useful perspectives from a variety of cultures. Like international is in our name because all of our courses are intentionally cross-cultural. We are always looking to cross various types of boundaries, whether they're national boundaries, linguistic boundaries, cultural boundaries. And I want to pause here and I'm going to ask a few questions of Anna first, because Anna's a first-year student in the IHON program. So she was sitting where a lot of you are right now, kind of deciding whether to apply to IHON, what was appealing about the IHON program. And I heard you say earlier that IHON was one of the reasons you came to PLU. So what was it about IHON that appealed to you last year when you were in this position?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, IHON is that Socratic learning style, and that's probably the biggest thing that attracted me to it. We don't have tests and exams like traditional classes, and we don't have a professor that just stands at the front and lectures to us while we take notes. It's an open discussion in conversation with the professor and in dialogue with the text, and that's something that I really liked. And also something that I really like, I like to be challenged, and IHON really does challenge you in all kinds of ways, even ways you might not expect it to, and you really will grow intellectually, and also like as a student. And you develop skills in how to keep your mind open and step outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's really valuable. And that's something that I knew the IHON program had. And so that's what really drew me to it.
Yeah. So you took IHON 111, that's our fall semester IHON course. You're in IHON 112 right now. Has there been anything surprising to you in kind of getting into the world of IHON this year?
I think it was just surprising how student-driven the classes are. And it's also something that I enjoy most about it. The professor will prompt students, but the students really drive the conversation. And it's really a safe space to really express your opinions on anything. And there are no right or wrong answers, which is something that I really like.
Yeah. And what tell everyone kind of what types of things are you reading in your first year IHON courses? And do you have any favorites?
Well, right now in my IHON 112 class, we're starting Don Quixote, which we started reading at the end of 111, and that's a text that I'm really enjoying. Also, the Odyssey I read in 111, that was one of my favorite texts. A lot of favorites, actually, yeah.
That's great. Well, thanks for those answers. I'm sure we'll return to you. I want to keep my formal presentation moving along so that we can have plenty of time for questions. And I'm going to talk a little about Oxford before turning to Jasmine for her to answer questions. But some of you probably know from our website, we have a study away program that is kind of was developed specifically for the IHON program, and it's the IHON Study Away program at Oxford University in England. This program is not exclusive to IHON. You can apply to study at Oxford if you're not in the IHON program, but IHON students do have priority. And there are limited seats, so if you're interested in studying away at Oxford, it behooves you to be an IHON student. We do offer the program every term, so that's fall, January term, and spring semester. And the semester programs, like all the gateway programs at PLU, the Gateway Study Away programs, the semester programs are kind of incorporated into your financial aid package. So if you live on campus at PLU, studying away at Oxford won't cost anything additional, which is a killer deal if you ask me. I think it's absolutely something worth taking advantage of. In Oxford, we have rental housing. We have an apartment for a PLU faculty member, where there's always a PLU faculty member who accompanies this program. And then there are student apartments that are right on the canal that runs through Oxford. And you have, in one direction, lots of green space that you can walk to. In the other direction, this gorgeous medieval city filled with all sorts of amazing restaurants and medieval architecture and all the Oxford colleges. It's really kind of a magical place. The semester program is designed with a PLU faculty member leads an intensive course during your first 6 weeks. And then the subsequent 8 weeks, the remainder of the semester that you're over there, students who study away at Oxford actually are connected with an Oxford scholar in their field of study for a one-on-one tutorial, which is really just an amazing opportunity for you to kind of dive deep into a field of interest of you to earn credit in your major, and to do so through the tutorial model, which is how Oxford students themselves study. And so you get connected with an Oxford scholar, you do this 8-week tutorial, and you earn credit, not just for IHON, but also for your major program. And roughly half of our students go to Oxford at some point in their PLU career. You can go as early as fall of your second year, and then all the way through your fourth year. And then I'm going to just put a slide. I have a lot of pretty pictures from Oxford while I talked to Jasmine. Jasmine and I were just in Oxford together in January. I was the faculty leader. Jasmine was one of the students. You can see her pictured up there on the top right. This was a class meeting that we had in the old library at the University Church in Oxford, which was dates to the 1300 was actually the original library for Oxford University. We had class there one day when we were actually reading a chapter about an event that happened there. It was kind of an awesome opportunity. But you can also see the Radcliffe Camera, which is the Dome building. PLU students who joined the rowing team a few years ago. So lots of cool opportunities in Oxford. Jasmine, I'm going to hold off on Oxford questions for a sec and ask you what made you choose to apply to IHON, and then we'll talk a little about Oxford.
So for me, what made me want to apply for IHON is because I am a bio major. I wanted to have a different way of learning because a lot of my classes are lecture based. They're really fun. I recommend it if you're a bio major, go for it. But IHON just offered a new opportunity for me to connect with other people who were outside of my major who I would have never met on campus. It allowed me to explore new ideas and identities within myself even. I'm originally from Helena, Montana, which is primarily white. I come from a very non-religious household, and through IHON, I've got to learn about a lot of new religions. I've got to learn about a lot of new cultures, and it's just something that I'm so grateful that I've been a part of while I've been here.
So let's talk a little about Oxford. You just studied away there last month. What was for you some of the big highlights of studying away at Oxford?
So I 100% recommend studying away at Oxford if you're in the IHON program. There was so many wonderful aspects of it. One of my favorite is you get to be inducted into the Bodleian Library, where we had to sit in this beautiful grand room and like swear that we weren't going to light a flame, that we weren't going to take books out of. And these libraries range all the way across Oxford, and there's so many books and a large database where you can just explore anything that you need to. So I personally did a research project on the Ashmolean Museum. So I got to go to the Bodleian Library that focused on archaeology. Another aspect of IHON that I loved is everything is walkable. Um, you can walk down different streets every day and find something new, but also it's small enough that you can just explore the whole city. And that's what my friends and I really liked while we were there. There's so many historical buildings. We went on a lot of study tours where we got to see churches and schools that range back to, was it like when was it, Seth?
12th century, so about 900 years.
So, yeah, and so that was amazing. We took a quick trip to London to go on a little study tour, and I don't know, just being surrounded by such beautiful architecture, such wonderful people. Everyone there is so nice. And just meeting a bunch of new friends really solidified my Oxford experience. And the classroom setting for me for J term at least, we got to go to the old friends meeting house, and there was 8 of us, and we sat in a circle and discussed the readings every other day, and it really enlightened my experience on religion and politics while I was there. So they offer different things at different times for J term, and then there are tutorials for fall and spring, which my friends loved. So I 100% recommend.
Yeah. And Jasmine was a rock star of our class in Oxford, so I really enjoyed having you. I have noticed my Apple Watch tells me that my step pattern has changed since I returned to Tacoma, because I was walking about 5 or 6 miles a day in Oxford, and I don't do that around Tacoma. One last thing, and then we'll open the floor for questions, and that's just to note that one other opportunity that is available for IHON students is the Kreidler Global Hall. There is a IHON wing in the Kreidler Global Hall that several IHON students live in. This is a an intentionally cross-cultural residence community, and IHON students, along with students in global studies and some of the language programs, are eligible to apply to live in Kreidler. So I always mention that as well. And then I'll put up a slide. It has my email address. You can find me pretty easily on the website. If you just search PLU IHON and go to the faculty page, I'm there as the director. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out, not just tonight, but going forward. And also, I want to emphasize that we accept applications throughout the spring on a rolling basis. If this program has interest to you and you're worried, did I miss it? Please submit an application. We'd love to see your application at any point during the spring or even into the early summer as we put together our next class of IHON students. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Hillary, I'll let you kind of moderate the Q&A section.
All right. If you're looking for the IHON application and you haven't found it yet, or you just haven't started it yet, it's in your applicant portal. So in the same spot where you have received your admission decisions and potential scholarship decisions, it's in that like next steps checklist. So there is if you hit next steps, a whole other checklist pops up. And so that's where that IHON application is for you. And like Seth said, they are reviewing on a rolling basis. So take the time to do it, but it's something nice to be able to kind of know and do earlier rather than later as you're thinking about next options for next year. So there's a couple that have come through on the chat, but one of the things to kind of start off is, as we're thinking logistically about the program, I think, you know, all of you talked a really amazing job about what in the classroom kind of looks like, but what is kind of the average class size of IHON, and how does that potentially compare to like intro level courses that you took, Jasmine, or that you're in, Anna, and kind of what's kind of the difference, I guess, between the feel of kind of your major classes and then your IHON classes?
I can go first. So for me personally, all of my IHON classes, I want to say I've been around, I think 16 was the max once, which was my intro class, but progressively as you go through the program, they get smaller and smaller, which helps the discussion a lot, I believe, just because you feel more comfortable to share. STEM is a little different at PLU, so sometimes your classes are gonna be 40 to 50 people in a lecture, but then you have smaller labs. So the IHON program is definitely very different than that, just because the intro level bio, chemistry, physics are going to have quite a few people in it.
Quite a few at PLU is 40 or 50 people in comparison to some maybe other schools that you're looking at that would be a small class size, but at PLU that's pretty big. Yeah. Anna?
Yeah, my classes have been around 10 to 12 people, I'd say. And my IHON classes. My other classes are bigger. I'm not in any big lecture classes, but they are like 20 something people, I'd say. And I definitely like the small class feel for IHON. Like Jasmine said, it really creates a comfortable environment where you can speak up and share your opinions. And in my 111 course, we got to a point where we didn't even need to raise hands anymore, and we could just speak, which was really nice. It just really felt like a big discussion. Yeah, and also because it's such a small class, you really have access to your professor, and you can talk to them a lot, which I think is really helpful.
For sure. Some other great questions, please keep putting them in the Q&A, and we'll try to also get some of the ones that you potentially asked in the registration as well. But kind of around the acceptance and like deciding about IHON, one is how many are generally accepted into the program each year, and are you tied to IHON if you do it in your first year, or do you have the opportunity to change to the kind of general education path if you need to?
Yeah, we shoot for a class of between 45 and 50 students for each class. We run 3 sections of the intro sequence, so those are capped at 16, so that's 48 students. That's kind of our target. If you start in IHON, it is possible to switch to the regular gen ed curriculum, and that does happen for a variety of reasons. Sometimes students, because of various reasons, they get behind, or they take on a second major, they need to switch to the gen ed because they can't fit the last of their IHON courses in. And that's fine. We usually figure out ways for your IHON courses to transfer to the gen ed curriculum if that's what's needed. Our hope is, of course, that you finish the IHON program, but certainly if the experience sounds great and you're not sure if it's going to work out in terms of credits, you're not committing yourself irrevocably to IHON if you start the program. And frankly, like, if the experience of the first year class of studying away at Oxford is appealing, my advice is apply to IHON. And then if you get, you get to study away at Oxford, you get the IHON first year sequence, and then you realize I need to switch to the regular gen ed, then, at least you've had those opportunities. So it is a possibility to transfer out. Less a possibility to transfer in, simply because we do require the first year sequence. We do often have a kind of mid first year entry, but that's really the last point at which you can enter the IHON program. So if you're interested, I think it's the smart move to go ahead and apply.
Yeah, I always tell students, if it's of any interest to you, go for that first, right? Because it is a little bit harder to join mid-year, right? But also it's limited on when you can, just because of the course sequence, like you were saying, Seth. So we always tell students, just apply. Just if it sounds of interest, this is your chance to do it. And at least for me and the students that I've worked with, all the students that were like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna stay in it, but I'm applying because, right, I like Oxford, I like these opportunities. None of them have dropped it, right? Like they get into IHON and they really love it. And so yeah, it's a great opportunity. A great question. Student was wondering about the average workload for IHON, potentially compared to a typical gen ed course, and how this might be different.
I'll let students take this one.
So, you go first.
I'd say the workload is kind of what you make it. Like, you can put more time into it if you want to, which is kind of what I did, because I actually really enjoyed what we were reading, and I wanted to be prepared for the discussions. But yeah, you have a certain amount of reading to do by your next class, and you want to, have some notes so that you can participate in class. But it is kind of what you put into it.
I would agree with Anna a lot. I've taken English course outside of the IHON program, and I would say that's very similar to what you're going to be doing, just because there is reading. There's probably one or two papers. I can't remember from my first year experience. There's one or two papers. But it is really what you put into it. The more you put into it, the better grade you're going to get, the better experience you're going to get, the better discussions in class you're going to get. So it really just depends on what gen eds you're looking at too, because psychology, biology, physics, business gen ed, they're all going to be very different as you go through PLU.
That's great. Thanks. You've talked a little bit about IHON 111 and IHON 112, but can either Seth or Jasmine, can you give some examples of what topics of the courses are after you're kind of done with that initial first year sequence?
I'll start, and Jasmine, you can tell about some of the ones you took, because I saw that question in the chat. And yeah, at the 200 level, we ask everybody in the program to take 4 200 level. We call them electives. There's usually 2 or 3 being offered every term, including J term. And gosh, they range the gamut. So we have a class that's going to be offered next year that's literally just on the year 1968, which is a important year. There's lots of things that happen, but it's bringing history, political science, cultural studies, music, focused just on this one year. We had a course this past year on the political problems of social media. I taught a course last year on the Christianity and the origins of race in the colonial era. Let's see, we have a class right now that's this semester. It's the class is designing a spaceship for interplanetary travel. So they have to think about all the things you need to travel through space for many years, if not decades. So not just science, but also psychology. What do you need in terms of culture and making people's lives worth living? So we have a kind of a variety of offerings that happen at the 200 level. And then the culminating class, the final class you take is a class called Exploring Justice, where you reflect back on your evolution as a person and as a thinker in the IHON program, and really focus in on a particular issue related to justice that is important to you. Jasmine, do you want to say anything about courses you've taken?
Yeah, so 3 stick out to me. One was the course I took with you, which was religion and politics. So it really examined how religion and politics have always been tied together. And even if we want a separation of church and state, how difficult that is, because it goes back to centuries and centuries before this. Another fun one, I did take the 1968 class, or a 60s class. I'm pretty sure it's the same one. And in that class, you get to watch movies, you get to read books. We learned about the Vietnam War, um we learned about like LSD and how that interfered with like the hippie movement. We learned a lot of stuff like that, which that course was very different than other IHON courses I've taken. So I would recommend if you can take the 60s course. I really like that one. And then I also took Sex in the Bible, where it examines more reproductive rights, I would say, more LGBTQ rights within the Bible that most people would overlook. So I think there's just a bunch of cool, awesome, fun courses that IHON offers that aren't just strictly, let's look back thousands of years. It's, oh, what's happening even in today's time, and it's a good experience.
That's great. I want to be in all these courses. Goodness. A question that was asked in one of the registration questions was, how can a student potentially balance like IHON and being an athlete, or IHON and being in a really high credit major? So how, for if either of you as students are involved, or Seth, if you have seen students that maybe are involved in any of those kind of situations, and how does that work out?
I do have a pretty busy schedule, but I'd just say time management is really important. And just whenever you have the time, like get your reading done. And you do want to block out a good amount of time to sit down with your IHON reading so that you're not distracted by other things, because sometimes it can be pretty difficult to decipher, and you want that space to just kind of be able to zone in on it. But there definitely are ways to find the time to get the work done, and produce some quality work.
For me, my 200 level classes, I'll give this as an example. I worked as an RA. I was a full-time biology major, which means I had about 3 labs a week, which are an extra 4 to 5 hours on top of the 4 classes I was taking. And I was able to manage time to do the IHON readings and have a personal life of my own. They're not daunting, I would say, as some people might think. Sometimes it's going to be like 10 pages, but sometimes it might be like 30, and they give you plenty of time in advance. They tell you the syllabus with all of the readings, you can plan it out. So I don't think it's too terrible just because you're going to be reading for any class that you're going to be in anyways. So it's about the same to me, at least.
At a previous IHON event, we had another student who said IHON classes aren't harder, they're just more interesting, which I thought I should just put that on the website.
There you go. That's our
but
new tagline. Yeah.
and I don't know if that's entirely true, but I do think they are really interesting, and I do think the workload is comparable. It's maybe a different sort of work, more maybe a little more reading, but fewer exams is maybe a trade-off that I would say is broadly true of IHON classes versus regular Gen Ed.
I think it's also sometimes hard to conceptualize when you have been in a potentially more like traditional high school, right, environment and educational system, that when you are in college, and especially if you're like fully in your major, right, and you're taking so many bio courses, you know, Jasmine, as you were talking about, that suddenly these IHON courses, or even, you know, the other gen eds that you get to take at PLU, suddenly become like the relief courses, right? They're these like fun courses that you get to take that are something different and work your brain in a different way, because you're so focused on one thing within your major that it's nice to have something else to also be able to, you'll hear a lot the students, right, are taking these throughout their time at PLU, not just in their first 2 years. So to strategically plan them out, to give yourself and your brain just something, you know, different to kind of think about too. Some quick logistic questions. I have 3 final questions that we'll be able to get to in the 3 minutes that we have left. If a student plans to come and visit PLU in this senior year, which if you haven't already, you definitely should to earn your visit scholarship, is it possible to sit in on an IHON course and or have a chance to meet with you, Seth, or other IHON professors?
Absolutely, just write me, we can set it up.
You also can work with Cecily, our visit team, if you put it in there, if you can't find Seth's email, we can help you in the admission office get that all set up too. Are the same classes offered each semester and term, or are they cycled through different years?
So we always offer 111 in the fall, 112 in the spring. Those are the 2 first-year courses. And then our IHON 328, the final class, is offered every term. One section is offered every term because different students need it in different terms. The 200 level classes are where you'll see the most variety semester to semester. We do have a few offerings that are pretty regular. We have a class on gender, sexuality, and culture that's offered most springs, and a class on labor that's offered most years. But the others, you know, might be offered every other year or even every 3rd year. So those do have a little more variety, and we can't always predict exactly what's going to be offered. I can tell you what's being offered next year, but the following year is still coming together. So.
And then final question is, for students that have applied to IHON, if they haven't heard back yet, when should they hear? And then generally, what's kind of the turnaround time for students that maybe are in that rolling admission space?
Yeah, usually within 2 weeks is kind of my internal deadline. There's some back-end processing in the admissions office, so you may not get your letter immediately after we issue a decision, but it should be within 2 or 3 weeks.
Right. And again, that should be released also, that information into your portal and everything as well. But always keep that portal login. Awesome. Alrighty, well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Hopefully you learned some information, got your questions answered. Thank you to our panelists. If you have any questions, feel free to look up Seth's email or email the admission office or your admission counselor. We can definitely help get you connected with Seth and the IHON team. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your Tuesday evening. And hopefully we'll see you at our future sessions. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.